Open-minded is one of those funny words because when people use it, they don't always mean it, because sometimes you find, and I found this a lot, I don't know if you did, but I'm going to pose this as an open question to all three of you guys, that when people start opening up the question about open source and so forth, then a bias creeps in, this weird bias that says, relational, isn't that old-fashioned? Shouldn't we be, going with something else? Shouldn't we go with Hadoop or NoSQL database or something like that? So I'm going to ask each of you if you've encountered that and how you've responded to it.
We've certainly encountered it, and usually the answer is yes, but not only. Because there are some things that just, as I said, they belong into Hadoop, and it's a good place to do things that are completely new workloads, big data workloads. This is the right place, but please don't do banking transactions or e-commerce transactions in Hadoop. It just will not work, right? Or, yeah, it may work, but eventual consistency is not the right way to deal with e-commerce transactions, right? So there is horses for courses, and when somebody says, yeah, I want to do some stuff over here, yeah, that's actually the right solution, because now I have graph databases. I didn't have graph databases before. They solve interesting problems that if I try to solve them in SQL, well, it's almost an unnatural act. I can do it, but it's not a good idea. Let's use a graph database to do it, right? If I have a petabyte of data and I'm ingesting a terabyte of clickstream data a day, well, it would not be a good idea to do that in a relational model. Let's use it. Let's use whatever the development has given us for it, right? I mean, I think it's a great opportunity. So, yeah, sometimes we may want to fight it, right? Because we'd love to have the business, but the right thing to do is to say, no, there's all this richness of solutions out there. Let's use them.
Yeah.
Brett? So, in my world, in the database realm that I come from, our old joke has always been that relational databases were designed by storage salesmen because it requires so much storage to store everything in a relational model. And if you look at older style hierarchical and network architectures, they're more efficient from a storage standpoint. Well, the fact of the matter today is storage cheap, and the costs keep coming down. And the reality is that everybody more clearly understands data that's represented in a relational model. So it's easy for them to comprehend the table and column concept and understand how to traverse that database as opposed to a hierarchical or networked architecture. Network databases were the most efficient ones ever designed. And they run at incredible speeds, but nobody understands them or wants to understand them or wants to code in them. And therefore they've died this slow death. They still exist. I even support one today in my shop. But the fact of the matter is relational is easy to understand for the masses. And for the masses of programmers, developers, business people, and everybody else. So it's good to have an opportunity to have a new relational database on the market that is understandable like the others, at a lower cost, is supported, that has the liabilities covered by someone like Enterprise DB in some regards, through the contracts and things. So it's welcome by me.
So, Bruce, do people...
Yeah, I mean, I've been with relational databases since 1989, and relational databases have been challenged, before. So, I think in the 90s it was the XML database was going to take over relational, and then in the 2000s it was going to be object databases were going to be the big thing. Or maybe I even have the order wrong, I can't remember. But, everyone's always wanted to sort of knock relational off as sort of the central position that they have. But really, no database has really been able to cover such a large general workload and be so easy to access the data in so many different fashions. I think that's really where relational shines. If you look at network databases or XML databases or object databases, those are very good, and even NoSQL databases, frankly, those are very good at getting at the data in a single way, and often a very simplistic
Yes.
way.
Yes.
Whereas relational has the ability, almost uniquely, to kind of go at the data from all sorts of different angles for analytics, for sort of reporting and batch processing. And it just seems like it's this thing that it's like can't nail jello kind of thing. It always seems to be able to morph into what you need. But to be honest, we've always also realized that, as Mark said and Brad said, I mean, there's this 10 or 20% of workload that's really horrific in a relational. A network is a good one. Clickstream data is another one that's just way too high volume for relational in terms of all of the stuff it has to do to get a row in, right? So I think that one of the great things about Postgres, and again, reiterating what I said this morning of it going sort of in new directions, is that Postgres is going in at least 8 different directions in terms of non-relational storage. Partially because it was designed in the 80s as an object relational database, not necessarily as relational only, so you can add data types and languages and indexing methods and all these cool stuff. So I even have a non-relational Postgres talk that lists 8 major areas that Postgres allows for non-relational storage, not only in terms of JSON-B, but big GIS data and full text search and range types and some really sort of experimental stuff, arrays, which you'd never see in relational.
Right.
So I think in an ideal world, we've got Postgres giving its relational. We've got these extensions to Postgres which allow non-relational to function natively inside of Postgres. And then for that extra 5%, I'd say we have the foreign data wrappers that Mark talked about that allows you to reach out beyond to access data in a very friction-free manner and pull it into the relational system where it makes sense.